Hello and welcome to another Batman Battle Report. 350 points of the Brave and the Bold versus a Joker crew again, except this time it's largely free agents to try out some new models and to try something a bit different from the Clown Horde, I guess you could call it. I think we're up to scenario 4 in the rulebook, but we'll take a look at that after taking a look at the two crews that we're fighting today. And then this will be probably the last battle report from this particular table, both in terms of its layout and room. I managed to find myself a nice cheap 3x3 fold-away table that I can hopefully mean I can use in my office to make room, so there's not a problem when I want to do Batman against when I want to do 40k. Makes it easier to have both games kind of be able to be played quicker. But anyway, that was inside baseball, ignore that stuff. Let's take a look at the two crews. So the Joker crew is once again being led by Arkham Asylum Joker, and his henchmen are Buffoon and Hobo Clown because they're cheap, because most of the points in this crew were taken up by the free agents from Terror in Gotham. We have Solomon Grundy and we have Man-Bat. Also a quick note, the Man-Bat model is terrible. Very annoying to assemble. Mine came with a busted leg, which basically meant none of the other parts could fit how they were supposed to, so I had to cut bits off and improvise. Don't look at him from the side and he looks okay. But other than that, very disappointed in that one. Thankfully Solomon Grundy and the Scarecrow model that we saw last time are more than make up for it. They're excellent. So trying something a bit different with Joker this time. He has got a lot of backup from his free agents. Solomon Grundy is obviously very, very tanky, very strong. I don't think he can manipulate objectives, but he's there to cause trouble. Man-Bat, I'm not sure how he's going to be. And the objectives for the Joker's crew, down here, 2 Riddler objectives, 2 Ace Chemicals, and 1 Loot. So also trying something a bit different with the Brave and the Bold as well. It's being led by Nightfall Batman, so this is not Bruce Wayne, this is Jean-Paul Valley, otherwise known as Azrael. He's going to be the leader. His sidekick is going to be Damian Wayne in a time-bending paradox of sorts. He's got Arkham Guard 2 and 3 with him, and trying the main new thing is that we have the Ezra Miller Flash, which means we're going to be experimenting with the Speed Force, which happens after Take the Lead. So before you distribute your counters for the turn, you have to do some extra stuff for the Speed Force to determine what powers any speedsters have. We'll cover that in the first turn, obviously. Objectives for this crew: medical supplies, ammo, and the Bat Signal. Signum, I was going to call it because of 40k. Signal. There we go. Not Signum. Trying that out as a new objective. Didn't cover additional equipment for both sides. The assault rifle using Arkham Guard has a magazine, and the other one has a flashlight, I think it was. In terms of Joker's crew, let me come back over here briefly. Both his henchmen, because we now know that only henchmen can take non-specific gear, they both have grapple guns, and the one with the nail gun has improvised armor, which means he's immune to the sharp special rule. And they both have nerve gas, which gives them sturdy and something else. Just because there's a lot of funding to be spared. Alright, let's go look over the mission. So we're up to scenario 4, like I thought, which is Skirmish. The time for trash talking is over. 2 gangs have decided to settle their differences on the city streets no matter how much chaos ensues. 6 battle round length as normal. The bonus VPs on offer: Bring Me His Head, 3 victory points to any player if their opponent's boss is knocked out or a casualty by the time the game ends. And Teach Them a Lesson, 2 victory points to any player if, when the game ends, the combined reputation value of the casualties from the opponent's crew is equal to or more than 50% of its total reputation. In other words, if you kill at least 50% value of the opposing team, you get 2 victory points. I think that's how that one's understood. So that's what we're going to be doing. Now we're going to set up lampposts, sewer gratings, etc. Take a look at deployment. Well, it's 8 inches on either long edge, so we'll see what that means. So here we are with the board set up with sewer markers, lampposts and objectives, playing on the difficult edge over there because of the rest of the table that's obscuring for the Joker's side, but still got lampposts adorning, I don't know, most of the roofs, along with some sewer gratings as well. However, everybody is on the ground level. The Flash is down there, and then we have basically the rest of the Brave and the Bold here, surrounding a sewer grating. Damian standing on the car because he thinks that makes him look cool. We've got some of the Joker objectives here. We've got 1 Riddle, Ace Chemicals, Loot, and over here we've got the other Ace Chemicals, the other Riddle, and that is it for him. For the Brave and the Bold objectives, 2 of them have to be over here, right next to the sewer grating, the medical and the ammo, and the Bat Signal has to be, or can be, on a building. I don't know if it says it has to be, in the enemy deployment zone. So there it is up there, next to where Man-Bat is guarding it. Solomon Grundy started there, Joker and Hobo Clown are started there, Buffoon is in this building, hoping to take some shots with his nail gun without having to move. And that's it for setup. Let's see who's going to be raising the plan first, although keep in mind, we'll come back with the Speed Force after this before the actual turn begins and the raise the plan phase happens. Green for Joker, pink for Brave and the Bold. Joker will be getting first activation. Both teams also have the same number of people as well, so there's no passes, which is interesting. That's the first time we've had that. So, we'll be back in a second with how the Speed Force works. So here's the overview of how the Speed Force phase works. At the start of every turn there's 10 Speed Force points to be distributed amongst one or more speedsters. Now we only have the Flash here, so it's not going to be relevant, but they draw a certain amount of power from the Speed Force. It's kind of like the Winds of Magic from old Warhammer Fantasy. And once the pool's done, that's it done for the turn, until it refills next turn. So if you have a particularly good speedster who happens to go first, they take the lion's share of the pool. It starts with the player whose turn it is, so if Joker's team had a speedster, he would draw first. As it is, this Ezra Miller Flash has 6 Speed Force points, so he draws 6 out of the 10, the other 4 just stay there. And then he can choose how to spend them in this table here, and if he uses one that has a paradox chance, you have to roll and bad things happen if there's a paradox. To start easy, we're just going to ease into this new mechanic. He's going to spend 2 on Super Speed level 2 and 1 on Super Speed level 1, which means he has 12 additional movement when he does get his activation this turn, because level 2 gives him an additional 8, level 1 gives him an additional 4, neither cause a paradox, and I see nothing that says they can't synergize. So I think the reason you're supposed to do it before the raise the plan, so the opponent has a chance to assume what you're going to do with a speedster and hopefully counter, because I guess it would be possible for a speedster to potentially like turn 1 combat. Either way, we'll be back with the start of Joker's first activation. So for the first activation of the game, the Joker crew opted to activate Man-Bat, and Man-Bat has Fly. He's a huge model and he can put up to 3 movement counters in his stat, I think, giving him a pretty long movement if he wanted. He could easily clear the distance to get over to this other building, for example, if he wanted to. Instead, presuming that the Flash was perhaps going to do exactly what he did assume, which was going to be grab the loot nice and quick, Man-Bat flew down and he has picked up the loot for himself. He does not have the stupid row unlike Solomon Grundy has it. So he can do that. He has the loot in his possession. He is stuck there, but his assumption that they didn't put anything into attack is correct. So now it's the Brave and the Bold's activation. So first activation for the Brave and the Bold was indeed the Flash. He had to rethink his strategy because he couldn't attack Man-Bat, and Man-Bat took his loot. So if he wanted to hold back 1 movement counter in order to manipulate an objective, that meant he had a total, thanks to Speed Force level 1 and 2, of 24 movement, I think. In fact, he might have the fast rule. Presumably he does, he must do, right? He does, so that actually would have been an extra 1 or 2 inches on top of that as well. So either way, though, he didn't use it all. He opted to move himself into the middle of the map and manipulated the riddle belonging to Joker. He got a 6, but sadly because it's not his objective, it's a -1, so it goes from an inspired solution just down to a normal solution, I believe, because I think the inspired solution is just a 6. We'll double check and amend if need be. So that's 2 victory points to the Brave and the Bold, and now it's back over to Joker for his next activation. So Joker was going to activate Buffoon next, however, totally forgot his nail gun is short range, which means it can only shoot up to 8 inches. He was going to shoot at the Flash, which might have been relevant. The Flash could have crouched for a better ping roll, opted not to because speedsters have a rule where if they use up all their counters available, they get a fatigue status for the rest of the turn. I think it's like -1 to all stats, attack, defense, etc, etc. So held on to that and didn't crouch as a result. Because Buffoon is out of range, which might mean he has to move from his little perch up there now, Joker went himself. He moved up from where he was standing behind Hobo Clown to the sewer grating. He then threw his explosive teeth at the Flash and did nothing to him because this Flash has defense 5. So couldn't even get the hit roll, let alone anything after that with the explosion. Disappointing, but now it's over to the Brave and the Bold. Quick activation for the Brave and the Bold. Damian Wayne activated. He used his Batclaw to shoot himself across the corner there and then went on to manipulate the Ace Chemicals. So he is claiming it, even though it's a Joker objective. And, assuming we remember, his first attack against someone with his sword will have the crit poison effect, if indeed it ever comes up. Back over to Joker. Hobo Clown activated next, and he's doing some work upon remembering he bought himself a grapple gun, along with Buffoon having one as well, which might be his quick way out of that building once he does decide to activate. So using the grapple gun, Hobo Clown shot along here and then used the rest of his natural movement to get that close to a Riddle and the Ace Chemicals. He couldn't get close enough to claim either, but next turn he can claim both. So that's something to watch out for. It also doesn't seem like the Brave and the Bold would be able to do anything about that. Well, I guess they could pop out that Sewer Grating there and hope for first activation. That's just theory at this point. So Joker still has Buffoon and Solomon Grundy to go, and Brave and the Bold has Nightfall Batman and both Arkham Guards. We'll see who goes next. So Jean-Paul's Batman is very slow because he's using kind of like an Iron Man suit. Makes him sturdy, but slow. So he opted to travel via Sewer Grating. Now there was a little bit of a misplacement with the Brave and the Bold's objectives. They were meant to be just far enough apart, the ammo and the medical supplies, that a base could fit in. They'd be knocked a little bit still, but point being there's not enough space. The idea was to pop out the sewer and be claiming both. It didn't seem in good faith to move them after this point, so keeping them where they are, he opted instead to stand next to the medical. He hasn't used it, but he is claiming it. So that will still get the Brave and the Bold some points at the end of the round. Moving on. So good old Born on a Monday activated next. He doesn't have much movement, he can only put one movement counter in his movement stat. However, he is huge, so that's a few extra bonus move inches. Anyway, he basically just stomped forwards as far as he could. Right smack dab there. Couldn't do anything else this turn, but if I was Damian Wayne, I'd be wetting myself right about now. For the next Brave and the Bold activation, the Arkham Guard 2, whichever one has the assault rifle, he shuffled up just a little bit so he could either potentially shoot at Solomon next turn or Man-Bat if he hasn't moved by then either with his assault rifle. It's a chance to do some good damage before they get in any closer. So Buffoon was in a difficult position because his nail gun only has short range, so he opted to come down. He didn't put any additional movement counters in his movement stat, so he was limited to getting to the door and that's it. Otherwise he would have used his grapple to just kind of shoot out the window and get close enough to maybe take a pot shot, because I think the nail gun is assault 3. Either way, he moved there, didn't do anything else sadly this turn, so the final activation for Battle Round 1 is going to be the Arkham Guard with the non-lethal shotgun. So with not much else to do, the Arkham Guard with the non-lethal shotgun moved up a little bit. He pulled away from the monster mash that's going to happen over there and is instead heading in the direction of the two objectives that Hobo Clown is hoping to occupy next turn. So that's it for Battle Round 1. We'll be back with a quick recap. There's no stuns to regenerate or anything like that, so it purely comes down to victory points generated. At the end of Battle Round 1, the Brave and the Bold are pulling into a little bit of an early lead as far as victory points go. They claimed a medical objective for 3. They have claimed an Ace Chemicals for 1. They have... let's see, was there another one? Oh, they solved the riddle. That's where it was. I was blanking for a second there. Yes, they solved the riddle for 2. In terms of Joker's crew, they claimed the loot for 1. And the way the Bat Signal objective works is it begins the game in the off position. It has to be manipulated to be switched on by the team that owns it to give 3 victory points per turn, whether someone's in contact with it or not, I believe. But for every turn that it's off, it generates your opponent 1 victory point. So Joker gets another one from that. So I think that's 5 playing 2, thereabouts, something like that, as we go over and see who's going to take first activation on Battle Round 2. Would have been more, obviously, if Nightfall Batman had been able to fit in between the ammo and the medical. That would have given 3 more points. Let's go for this colour. Brave and the Bold takes first action in Battle Round 2. Of course, to start Battle Round 2, we have to look at the Speed Force powers. So since we know that the Brave and the Bold are getting first activation, the Flash is going to activate with his 6 points. Fast combo, so for each action counter spent he hits twice, so essentially 2 attacks for the price of 1. He's going to use Muscle Growth, which is +1 to his damage and strength tests. And he is going to use, he might as well use Super Speed level 2, none of those have paradox effects, so that's 2, 3, yeah, he still has some left over as well. So Super Speed level 2, he might as well use Super Speed level 1 just to help him cover more distance in, because that's 3, 4, 5, yeah, he can, he has 1 left over. Super Speed level 1 and 2, fast combo, muscle growth. Hopefully that's within the rules. Obviously Speed Force is new, so if anything is being done incorrectly, by all means point it out. But that's how it's going to start. Now let's go see first activation. So for the first activation in Battle Round 2 for the Brave and the Bold, they activated the Flash as expected. Starting to see why you have to do like muscle growth and stuff. You can only have 3 attack dice max, so if you use muscle growth or whichever one it was, That makes it 6. However, he only has he doesn't have reinforced gloves, so he only has 1 stun per attack, plus the electric bonus, I guess, which doesn't really apply most of the time. So at best he could put out 6 stun a turn. Also worth mentioning, he has the moral compass rule, which means no one in the team can kill. So it's worth mentioning in case it comes up, especially when it's Damien's turn. Anyway, he used his super duper speed to hit Hobo Clown multiple times in the back of the skull. He managed to do 3 stun to him. Hobo Clown has 4 endurance, so he's still standing, although there's not really going to be much he can do against the Flash. But caused some trouble. I was going to say that's first blood, but it was stun damage, so not really. But either way, Joker's activation is next. It was clearly time for a little bit of payback come Joker's activation. Solomon Grundy waddled forwards, not very far, then used his overwhelming, handy Bleed 1 gravestone to swing it upside Damian Wayne's skull. Managed to get a crit as well on the dice, which for him does the bleed, not a stun. Anyway, in total, Damien took 3 blood, 2 stun. He has 5 endurance, so he is knocked out. He's not dead, but he is knocked out. So he's no longer claiming the objective either. I think Solomon Grundy is stupid, so he can't manipulate the Ace Chemicals, but he can claim it. So, well, unless he has a special rule like the Gotham Butcher or something, I'll double check that. Either way, Damien is knocked out. If he becomes a casualty, he gives up an extra victory point, so there's still a reason to go after him even though he's knocked out. We'll see what happens. It's Brave and the Bold's activation next. So next for the Brave and the Bold, Arkham Guard. I'm not cheating by looking at his card or anything. 2, activated, and remember he started with +1 magazine, so this was essentially his free shot for the game. He had a choice between shooting Solomon or shooting Man-Bat. Solomon's only a 2+ to hit, whereas Man-Bat's a 4+, so he opted to take his 3 shots at Solomon Grundy, rolled 2 1s on his hits. Very disappointing. The one hit that did go through did eventually damage him, doing the full damage, so Solomon Grundy took 3 bleed. Does he care? He has 14 endurance, so he's not feeling it. He doesn't lose any counters from being wounded either because he's desensitized, so he probably doesn't care much. Now on to Joker's next activation. I'm going to cover 2 quick activations back to back now. Man-Bat went next for Joker's crew. He just opted to move up as far as he could towards the Arkham Guard that just fired. Couldn't quite make it, but he's obviously being rather threatening where he's standing. Ignored Damien for now because he's not a threat. Kind of wanted to present himself as a target for who did go next, which was the Arkham Guard with the non-lethal shotgun down there, because he could have also tried to get around to shoot 1 shot at the Hobo Clown. He opted to take both his shots at the, well, 1 shot that hits twice because they didn't move, at Man-Bat. 1 hit managed to get through everything, so he did 2 stun to Man-Bat, which isn't terrible. But now we're on to Joker. Joker has a +1 in terms of like number of people to go, thanks to Damien not getting a turn now. He still has to move himself or Buffoon, and then all that leaves for the Brave and the Bold is Batman himself. Let's see what Joker does next. Buffoon activated and moved forwards ever so slightly because he had no movement counters this turn. He was prepping a shot again but had no one to shoot at really. Then Nightfall Batman took his turn and just opted to stay next to the medical. He manipulated it to have a narcotics dose, but other than that he's just trying to hold on to the points because now there's going to be a chance to have a deficit compared to Joker's crew. That just leaves Joker to activate for Battle Round 2 to be over. He is next to Sewer Grating, so he might choose to take that. I guess we'll see in a second. So for Joker's activation, which is the final one of Battle Round 2, as just said, he did take the Sewer Grating. Too much of a risk going after Nightfall Batman, so instead he opted to put pressure on the Arkham Guards by materialising there. He took the Sewer Grating obviously, so he can't do anything this round, but he might not need to with Man-Bat and Solomon Grundy there and Damian Wayne unconscious on the floor. So all that remains now is the recovery phase and adding up of points garnered by both teams, so we'll be back in a second for that recap. Addendum, because totally forgot Hobo Clown did not have an activation there. That was embarrassing. I'm sorry, Hobo Clown. So he decided not to try and engage the Flash and instead sacrificed himself to claim the Ace Chemicals for this turn and attempt to solve the riddle. However, he got a 2, which means he solves it, or like he fails to solve it but doesn't take any damage, so it gave up no victory points. Now back with a recap for realsies this time. At the end of Battle Round 2, it sees things standing as thus. Joker's crew holds both Ace Chemicals for 1 victory point each. The bat signal remains off. Definitely should have been placed on the building with the helicopter, but that's another story for another victory point. For knocking out a sidekick, that is 2 victory points. And the riddle was solved, but for no result. The Brave and the Bold only got 3 victory points from holding the medical supplies the Batman is sitting on. But that kept them in it. That gives them 9 so far to Joker's crew's 8. However, Joker's crew obviously has a big potential for more points next turn because they are dominating this side of the board where they are hoping to prey on the Arkham Guards. Let's see who's getting first activation. Also, just in terms of like the Speed Force face, is going to be the exact same as last time. So Speed Force level 1 and 2, Muscle Growth, and whatever the other one was. So we're not going to cover that because it's exactly the same. Brave and the Bold gets first activation. That could be important. Oh, in terms of recovery, also, totally forgot about that. Damian Wayne did not wake up. He's still unconscious. Also, the fudge I'm making is ready. Apologies for that. The Man-Bat recovered 1 stun. Hobo Clown recovered no stuns. We'll move on to Battle Round 3 right after I finish making this fudge. Back in a second. So, leaving Damian to his fate pretty much, the Brave and the Bold activated the Flash first, and he shot off a kinetic lightning blast. Well, it's a beam, but whatever. Hobo Clown managed to only get 1 hit through to the winding stage, did 1 blood, 1 stun, which was enough to knock him out. He is down on the ground, down and out. Remember, you're not allowed to kill as long as that Flash is on the table. Flash then moved, because you can attack and move, or move and attack. And he used more than enough, well, he didn't even need to use any movement counters, honestly, thanks to the Speed Force. He moved next to the medical and manipulated it, so he has a narcotics dose, and he is now claiming that objective, meaning that Batman can freely move away from it. There's things planned for him. Anyway, we're on to Joker's first activation for Battle Round 3. First activation for Joker, and it was Solomon Grundy doing a coup de grace on Damian. We played out the attack as normal, just to see how much damage he would have done. Would have been 4 blood, 4 stun. Either way, Damian is now a casualty, which I think only would bother Bruce, who's not here, so who cares. But he would normally just give up 2 more victory points for being made a casualty and removed. Because he has the invaluable rule, that's 3. So that's a good way for Joker's crew to catch up. Also, he's gone. I think everybody can celebrate Damian Wayne being gone. Anyway, moving on to the Brave and the Bold's next activation. So the next person to go for the Brave and the Bold was Arkham Guard 2. Yeah, 2. With his assault rifle, he shot at Man-Bat, and then opted to move just his base movement away as far as he could, because Man-Bat can't, well, I guess if Man-Bat flew, it wouldn't be a problem. He'd have trouble fitting through otherwise, which is actually a base defense, because you have to be able to fit through the gap, so he would have to fly to get over there. Although Joker's there, obviously, then he can cause trouble. It was his only way to move. Anyway, you'll notice that there's no damage at all on Man-Bat. That's because this is, here's the hit roll for his shot. It was 3 1s. That's some bad luck right there. Didn't even get through to do just the scratches. That's truly terrible. Anyway, we will now move on to Joker's activation. So next, Man-Bat did indeed choose to fly again. He popped down behind Arkham Guard 2 and clawed at him with the number of attacks available to him. Thankfully, finally a dice roll went in the Brave and the Bold's favour. And the Arkham Guard rolled 2 defense against 2 of the attacks. 1 got through. He's got claws, so each one does 1 blood, 1 stun. I think that leaves him on 3 HP, 3 endurance. Yes, it does. But at least he's alive. And relatively unhurt, unlike a certain Wayne heir, who's better off forgotten. Moving on, Arkham Guard 3 went next and shot his non-lethal riot shotgun into the back of Man-Bat's head. Did really well, did 4 stun to him. Man-Bat still had 1 stun left over on him, 7 endurance, so he's down to 1 endurance remaining, which is pretty good. If he hadn't recovered that stun at the end of the last turn, he would have been knocked out, which would have been the better result, obviously. But not too bad. He then moved after firing. He's kind of just heading towards this Ace Chemical. He could also potentially arrest Hobo Clown when he's over there for an extra victory point, which is, both the Arkham Guards have the arrest rule, which is what you can also get if you buy handcuffs for anyone, I think. So anyway, Joker's still got himself and Buffoon to go, and then Brave and the Bold just has Batman. Let's see what happens. Quick addendum before we get into Joker's turn, I can't count. Man-Bat would have 2 endurance left, not 1. Anyway, Joker activated, he moved up. He was in a bit of a difficult position, because if he just threw his explosive teeth, could have taken out Arkham Guard, but also potentially could have taken out Man-Bat. So instead, he opted to move into close combat with his little knife that has crit poison on it. He did only 1 blood to the Arkham Guard, but knocked him over. So he's not a casualty, he still has 2 endurance left, but he has to spend a movement counter to stand up at the next activation he gets. So, now Batman has to activate, and we'll see what he does. So perhaps unsurprisingly, Nightfall Batman moved ever so slightly, so he's now claiming the ammo cache for some points, because they need it to catch up with what they've lost this turn. And just also to quickly cover Joker's last activation with Buffoon Clown, he took the Sewer Grating from over there, didn't move very far, just to there, so he can cause a little bit of trouble in case that Arkham Guard gets away, or Indeed, if Hobo Clown gets arrested, he can still make a move on the Ace Chemical thing. So we'll be back in a second for the Battle Round 3 recap, and to see who goes first in Battle Round 4. In the Battle Round 3, also finally remembered you can spend leftover special counters, not movement counters, to try additional attempts to get rid of more stun markers. Man-Bat recovered from 2, Hobo Clown did not wake up, and the Arkham Guard with the assault rifle did not recover the 1 stun he had. As far as victory points, Joker holds 1 Ace Chemicals, holds 1 loot, the bat signal is still off, and I think that's it. Let me just check. Oh, and obviously the 3 victory points for making Damian Wayne a casualty. It's 2 normal for making a sidekick a casualty, +1 because he has the rule that gives +1. Brave and the Bold holds ammo for 3, medical for 3, and knocked out a henchman for 1. So, believe it or not, despite the Brave and the Bold not winning any of the actual combat happening, points-wise they're still winning. Although, Joker's crew is looking good to get those bonus objectives for the scenario. Anyway, let's see who is going first. The Speed Force might be a bit different this time as well, so we'll cover that in a second, depending on who goes first. Brave and the Bold is going first. That means Joker is guaranteed to go first in the final 2 turns of the game, interestingly. We'll be back with the start of Battle Round 4. So the Flash is going to try and do something maybe a bit silly in this turn. He's going to use Hyperspeed, which is place him anywhere on the board. There's a 5+ chance for a Paradox, however, so let's quickly see. A Paradox is happening. Knew it. Knew it. So Paradoxes are on the next page. You've got to roll 2d6 and compare the result. There's another dice over there. So that is 6, 7, 8, 9. The model suffers a -2 penalty to its defense until the end of the round. Does it still use the ability though? Let's see here. I'm not sure, hang on. Okay, here we are. When a model uses speed power with a Paradox, roll 1d6. Immediately roll on the Paradox table, apply the result. Once Paradox has been resolved, assuming the speeder continues in play, the speed power automatically fails. Okay. He was going to go up to the bat signal, but he can't. So he has a -2 to defense, and he can't move. Well, I mean, he can move normally, I guess, but he didn't use any other Speed Force powers because that used all 6. Alright, time for the setup as normal then, and we'll see how the turn plays out. So to start off Battle Round 4, the Riot Gun using Arkham Guard activated, and he opted to move into contact with these chemicals in order to control it. He also used his arrest ability to arrest Hobo Clown, so there's no chance of him getting up. He, for the purposes of the game, is counted as a casualty, so that's a bonus victory point as well. And he's going to be removed from the board. There's no chance for him to recover after this. So now it is Joker's activation. Also, it's worth pointing out, because the turn started with a difference between the total models for each team, the Brave and the Bold have 1 pass they can use. Man-Bat attacked next and tried to do a coup de grace on the unconscious Arkham Guard 2. Did 1 blood, 1 stun. Batman's side then used their pass because there's no saving him, essentially. Joker went. He whiffed kind of bad, even though he was hitting on 2s, because he's unconscious on the ground. Got 1 hit through for the coup de grace, which converts 1 of his stun to blood, as I understand it, which means he currently still has 1 stun marker left on his card, which has to be converted to blood before he's considered a casualty. So he could still potentially stand up at this point. He's on 4 blood, 1 stun. So there is a chance, not very much, but there is a chance. So that leaves Buffoon and Solomon Grundy for Joker, and Flash and Batman for Brave and the Bold. A little bit different, but this is going to be kind of like a quick fire end of Battle Round 4 due to not having many tactical options specifically for the Brave and the Bold. Solomon Grundy wants to stay holding these chemicals for now just for the victory point. Buffoon moved as best he could over to here, kind of pincering the Arkham Guard 3 that's guarding the Ace Chemicals. Flash and Batman both need to stay still to hold their objectives for those tasty 6 victory points between the two, so they had to stand still. So not an ideal action-packed end to the battle round, but that is what they're going to have to do. We'll be back with the recap in a moment. So at recap, Man-Bat did not recover 1 of his stun markers at all. The Arkham Guard did not wake up either. In terms of victory points, Joker has Ace Chemicals, knocked out a henchman for another victory point. The bat signal is not on for another victory point. holds the loot, which I can't remember if I remembered to mention at the end of the last turn, but have been adding it up. So 1 victory point for Man-Bat, still holding the loot as well. In terms of the Brave and the Bold, they have arrested a henchman, otherwise counting as a casualty, so that's 1 victory point for that. They hold the Ace Chemicals here for 1 victory point, and they hold the Medical and the Ammo for 3 victory points each. So again, they are still ahead in victory points purely because they're holding the 2 high value ones. A little bit of a shame that their Bat Signal is generating victory points for the enemy, but we know for a fact that Joker is going first activation for the final 2 turns of the game, but there's the counter just to prove it. So I don't think it's going to end well for this Arkham Guard over here. So at the start of Battle Round 5, before we raise the plan and to distribute counters, we have to do the Speed Force. Once again, the Flash is trying to use Hyperspeed. Once again, he gets a Paradox. Okay. Well, let's just remove that for a second there, and 5, 6, 7, 8. Is that literally the same result? Oh, the book's closed. Hang on. Speed Force, Speed Force. Where are we? I think I went too far. Yes, I did. It's further back. Oh, there it is, right there. What did we get again? 5, 6, 7, 8. Too tired, the model is knocked down and receives 2 stun damage. No, that's much worse than the negative defense when it's not going to be hit. Okay, so he has to stand up on his turn. He takes 2 stun damage, which means he's just going to be sitting still again, which is a shame. What are the chances of rolling 2 6s? Honestly. Anyway, we'll be back with Joker's first activation. So to the proper first activation, Man-Bat activated. He just waddled up, didn't even bother flying or anything, and smacked the Arkham Guard with the riot gun. Only 1 hit got through in the end with his claws for 1 blood, 1 stun, no knockdown or anything like that. So that guard has 3 endurance left. Not boding well for him at all. But we'll see now as we move on to Brave and the Bold's activation. Arkham Guard 3 shuffled around the Ace Chemicals, so he's still contesting it, but not in base to base, so he could shoot just 1 rate of fire, obviously, with his final shot from his riot shotgun. Didn't do anything to Man-Bat, unfortunately. So now we're probably going to do another kind of like super quick recap after this. Buffoon's, we'll see what he does. He's obviously going to try and take out the Arkham Guard, but after that, it's just down to whether or not Joker can kill the unconscious Arkham Guard 2. Solomon Grundy is going to stay where he is, and Batman and Flash have to stay where they are as well, other than Flash standing up, obviously. So yeah, we'll see what Buffoon and Joker does in a quick recap after this. So to recap the rest of Battle Round 5, very quick here, I guess that's the upside of using elite armies, although the Brave and the Bold did suffer from some horrific rolls, and also just some poor choices on both placement of objectives and who were sent after objectives. For instance, the Arkham Guard should definitely have been sent to hold objectives, while Batman and the Flash tried to take out villains. Anyway, not the end of the game yet. They might actually still win purely because of holding victory points, we'll see. Buffoon stayed still, shot all 5 shots of his nail gun, did 2 blood into the Arkham Guard here. He's got 1 endurance left, so he is still standing, which means that Ace Chemicals is contested for this round, so it'll give no points. Over here, Joker very easily just put every attack into the unconscious Arkham Guard other one and killed him, so he's removed as a casualty. Solomon Grundy staying on the objective. Batman and the Flash are staying where they are. The Flash stood up. Other than that, that is the end of the Battle Round 5. And we already know the final symbol in here is Joker's. Joker's getting first turn on the final turn of the game. Let's see how this swings. Oh wait, no, we still have to do point recaps. Ha! Back in a second. So at the end of the penultimate turn, the victory points gained stand like this. Joker holds 1 Ace Chemicals, the other one is contested, so it's giving out no points. Killed a henchman for 1 additional victory point. The bat signal remained switched off for another victory point, and that is all they got that turn. I believe the Brave and the Bold hold the ammo, hold the medical for 3 victory points apiece, and that is it. Now, because they've been holding the 2 very valuable victory points per turn, I think they're sitting on, it was 29 or 30, and Joker's at like 21-ish. I've forgotten now. We have a tally, it's something like that. So Joker is losing as we go into the final turn, however obviously has more models on the field. Very high chance of getting both victory conditions in the secondary objectives, which might swing it. He's going to have to, well, ideally kill this Arkham Guard for 2 more victory points, to basically just trying to cover the gap, or at the very least try and contest the objectives. We'll see what happens as we go into Joker's first activation for the final turn. Quick addendum regarding the Speed Force. This time the Flash is going to use Hyper Combo, or whatever it was called, the more attacks, and that's essentially it, because he has to stand still. So he doesn't need to use any other speed powers. So Joker's first activation in the final battle round of the game was to activate Buffoon to shoot his nail gun into the back of Arkham Knight 3 or 2, whichever. Did 4 blood, killing him outright, so that's 2 victory points, 1 for knockout, 1 for casualty. He's obviously no longer holding the objective, so Man-Bat is holding it. He then kind of moved up just into the corner of the building there, because there's no need to potentially reveal himself for a kinetic lightning blast from the Flash. That Flash has mixed combat style, incidentally. Batman used his pass, and then Joker made Solomon Grundy go, who's just sitting on the objective. So now Batman has to decide what he's going to do. If they're just going to leave the Flash and Batman sitting there, or if they are going to hope for something better. Let's see. Flash moved ever so slightly and moved on top of the sewer grating. Now he is only obviously a light character, don't know if that counts as Batman touching it as well. Basically just doing that because Joker is the only one close enough to a sewer grating to use it. He couldn't take out either of these two, but he could at least contest an objective if it came out the sewer and touched it. So the idea there is, again, not 100% sure if this is how it works, but if Joker was then to travel through a sewer, he'd have to appear around here somewhere and thus not be touching the objective. Not sure if that's how it works. We'll see whether or not a 3-point difference would have made any change to the final results, but we're counting that. Either they are both heavy enough that they stop a normal sized model from coming out, or the normal sized model can appear, say, there and contest, or he has to appear there, and even though he's not touching the objective, he's touching someone who is, so maybe that's contesting as well. It basically just comes down to that because Man-Bat's going to hold the Ace Chemicals, and there's nothing else to be done. Nightfall Batman obviously severely wasted. Flash got unlucky with 2 Paradox rolls, unfortunately. If he'd switched on the bat signal, could have just ran away with it. Probably should have tried to do hyperspeed right at the start of the game. So we'll add up the final scores, including the bonus objectives, and see if 3 victory points either way would have swung the result. So at the end of the final battle round and the game, Joker's crew holds both the Ace Chemicals. Sorry, there's a siren going off in the distance. They both knocked out and made a casualty of another henchman, so that's 1 victory point and then another victory point. And they got 1 victory point for the bat signal still not being switched on for the entire game. The Brave and the Bold got 3 for medical, 3 for ammo, and 3 points either way if Joker had taken the sewer to contest. Wouldn't have made a difference. If he had been able to contest both of them, it still would not have made a difference in this turn. Now technically he maybe should have done that earlier rather than trying to kill the cop, because that's only 1 additional victory point for killing a henchman. Either way, the scores stand that the Brave and the Bold have 36 victory points and Joker has 27 victory points, giving the Brave and the Bold the victory, even though it certainly doesn't feel like it at all, because the majority of the match was just the Flash and Nightfall Batman camping those 2 objectives. Nightfall Batman obviously going to have to use him again in the future. Big mistake not just sending henchmen. Thinking at the start there was that if the henchmen were sent, Joker and Buffoon and Hoboclown would just back out around this building and they would go and presumably win the fight over there. So that's why Batman went over to kind of be intimidating. Didn't matter though, because of the monster mash that happened over here with Solomon Grundy and Man-Bat just wrecking face, just charging forwards. Solomon Grundy isn't scared of nothing, as it turns out. So they were just able to absolutely decimate the backline. Damian didn't stand a chance against Solomon Grundy, should have backed off. But his goal was to get to Heerish to backclaw up to switch on the bat signal. That was all he was for on that side. He really should have started further on the left like the Flash did. As far as the Flash goes, obviously very unlucky with the Paradox rolls on his Speed Force. Also not sure if he's allowed to run up buildings, because the Flash can run up buildings. So I'm not sure if like when you use hyperspeed you're allowed to do that. I couldn't find it stated one way or the other in the rulebook. So if you know rather, please do let me know. Anyway, that's it for this table as well. I'll make another different looking setup for the next few matches we play, hopefully in a different table in my office as well, so I don't have to take up the 40k area with Batman. Still enjoyable though. I hope you also enjoyed watching. By all means, point out anything you think was wrong, ideally also citing rulebook pages if possible, and maybe what crews you'd like to see on the channel. I'm very interested to know. Thank you for watching, thank you for the support, and I will hopefully see you next time. Ta-ta for now. Whoops, after the ta-ta for now addendum, because I totally forgot to mention the scenario's secondary objectives. No leader was KO'd or casualtied, so that gave no victory points. This is why I didn't mention it. And the other one was if the casualties are... I can't remember now if it was knocked out and casualties, but either way, they have to equal or exceed half the total reputation value to award 2 victory points. In other words, do the casualties add up to at least 175 rep? The Brave and the Bold, Damien, and the 2 Arkham Guards barely come to 120-ish, so no victory points were awarded from the mission itself. That's why they weren't mentioned. Sorry, I forgot to mention that in the closing bit. So once again, I'll say thanks for watching and ta-ta for now.